Hello, John Kiriakou. I'm Ted Rall, and hello, everyone else. You are watching DeProgram with me and John Kiriakou, and it's good to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for being with us, everybody. It feels like it's been forever since we've done this. I know it hasn't, but
yeah, no,
that's how quickly the world moves.
That's true. I mean, we could do this twice a day, and I don't think we'd be able to keep up.
Yeah, I have to agree.
So. All right, so let's get to it. Donald Trump is touring the Gulf states. He's been hanging out, and there's a lot of news to report out of there. Lot to get into. So, among other things, he's been cozying up with the new post-revolution or coup or whatever you want to call it, post-Assad regime government of Syria. The current new president, former member of al-Qaeda. Now he's new and improved, clean shaven, sort of. Well, he still has the beard, but it's trimmed. Trump seems to be. I mean, we don't have formal diplomatic recognition, but when the president of the United States meets with you on the sidelines and is willing to be videotaped, can that be far behind?
Oh, it's going to happen. And it was funny that Trump said today that the reason why he just decided arbitrarily on a whim to lift all sanctions on Syria was because Mohammed bin Salman asked him to. But he also said he had spoken with Erdogan, Turkey's President Erdogan, today, and Erdogan asked him to do it. Ted, I got to tell you, the Israelis have to be losing their shit today over all this that's going on. But there's something even more exciting. So the Iranian press is reporting today that, well, you know what? Let me back up. They reported yesterday that the talks were off track. They were probably over. The United States keeps changing its position, especially on enrichment, because every country is permitted to enrich some uranium for their own experimentation or civilian power necessities. And the United States has been demanding that Iran not be permitted to enrich any uranium at all. So today, the Iranian press said, well, wait a minute now. There may be a deal at hand, because the Saudis have also asked the United States help in enriching their own uranium, which they've been asking for years, because they want to open nuclear power plants in Saudi Arabia, because, of course, they so desperately need additional energy resources. But anyway, the Iranians said maybe Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Iran can enrich uranium together under the auspices of American inspectors. That sounds like a plan.
Well, that sounds exactly like the plan that would resolve even the concerns of Iran hawks in the U.S. Congress, because they always were concerned that they wouldn't have full access to the Iranian program, that it's buried deep behind like a bunker buster bomb, proof facility, that U.S. inspectors can't get in. How can we trust the Iranians? This solves that problem.
It does. It solves the problem. In the meantime, your favorite senator and mine, Lindsey Graham, has decided to fly to Ankara to consult with the Turks. But he said that he doesn't like any of this. He doesn't like any of it even a little bit. And that he's going to go onward from Turkey to Israel because he needs to consult with our friends and allies in Israel over this unacceptable new behavior by Donald Trump.
Well, that's a positive sign. I mean, generally speaking, Lindsey Graham is like a compass that consistently points south. You just know if he's in favor of puppies and kittens, you should come out against them.
That's right.
That's good. Yeah. I mean,
I'm liking it.
That the Turks and Erdogan and the Saudis are on the same page about anything, right? I mean, it was so recent that the Turks were furious about what happened to Jamal Khashoggi on their territory.
Right.
and they revealed that, oh yeah, we've been wiretapping the consulate, and we have all this on tape, and we're going to release it. And so, that wasn't that long ago. It's all forgotten now, but
they're treating it like it's ancient history. It was 5 years ago, something like that.
I think it was 2018, maybe ish.
Is it that long now? Yeah, 2018, 2019. No, you're right. You're right.
It was pre-pandemic.
It was pre-pandemic. You're exactly right. And but Ted, the world has changed very quickly. And you wake up every morning and you look, for example, at the Iranian press. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the days and weeks before Trump announced that he was opening talks with the North Koreans. Mm-hmm. That's what this reminds me of.
Although that never went, obviously, I mean, it's not fair to say it never went anywhere, but it didn't get where we kind of hoped it would go. Wow. But I mean, certainly tensions were cooled.
Yes,
I think,
without a doubt.
It was, I mean, we were really at a high pitch at that point. So I mean, that's funny, right? I mean, right now, Trump has a lot of pots on the fire, right? He's got talks to deal with it. Speaking of Turkey, in Istanbul, between Russia and Ukraine tomorrow, right?
Yes.
This was initially Putin's idea. Hey, let's meet. Then the Ukrainians were initially skeptical and reserved and said, no, we want a full permanent ceasefire before we'll consider talking. Then Trump leaned on the Ukrainians and said, no, you just go and talk and see if there's a deal that can be had. Zelensky then pivoted and said, okay, I'll personally go and sit down with the Russians.
Right.
Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, he's going. I don't think Putin's going to go, although I wouldn't put it past him to make a surprise appearance, but I don't think that will happen. I think Putin might have shown up personally had Zelensky been behaving in a more using more tempered rhetoric in the last 2 months or so. But he's been all over social media and screaming and behaving kind of like, just he said a lot of things that Putin probably can't let pass. So, he's not going to go up in person. But still, these are high level talks. And so he's got Trump is sending a few people from the Gulf up to negotiate this stuff, like Litkov and the idiot general whose name I forget right now, who's a moron. As long as you just keep him out of the room, send him out to run an errand, go to the covered market and buy some trinkets.
Right.
Go.
Right. Exactly.
Be gone. So I mean, they might get business done there. The Qataris have just offered to buy $20 billion worth of American planes from Boeing. Right. Hilariously. Hopefully these are the ones that don't fall out of the sky.
Yeah, I hope so.
And the Saudis are offering, they're projecting up to $1 trillion in investment in the United States. We know that, I mean, I guess this was MBS's big play. He always Khashoggi stuff was not going to matter because it was all going to be big picture, macroeconomic, big politics, big power politics. And his whole vision is for Saudi Arabia to be as big a power on the world stage as the big four were after World War II in the Security Council, right? That he wants Saudi Arabia to be as important as the UK or China, and I guess they have the money for it. They never had legitimacy before, but.
No, that's right. Interestingly, too, the Washington Post reported today that compared to his first term, the value of Donald Trump's investments in the Middle East are 300% higher. Wow. 300% higher. So, with the Supreme Court's decision that the emoluments clause just, I guess, isn't important anymore, you can make billions of dollars that maybe Ted and John might call a bribe, or maybe the Gutteries would call a $400 million gift of a Boeing 747, and that's all okay. And I think a lot of Republicans would say, especially today with these announcements, that who cares if Trump makes a couple dollars? This is good for the United States. It's good for the American economy. It's going to be $1 trillion plus of new investment. I'd rather not have the investment if it means that the office of the presidency can be corrupted.
I agree with you, John. I mean, I think it's very concerning. And, part of what, I always thought that one of the things that Democrats, Republicans, the left and the right could agree on is that the United States doesn't want to be a vassal state.
Yeah.
And this effectively, if it works out the way that it's being sold to us, it turns the U.S. into a vassal state, right? I mean, it's like, obviously, the Saudis, if they've invested $1 trillion here or $250 billion, they're going to continue to get their calls returned more than ever before.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
And even the optics. I mean, there's been a lot of focus on this offer of an Air Force One for Trump. Obviously, look, it is a bribe. I mean, I don't even understand how this works. He keeps it after he leaves office. Okay, so does that mean that President Vance or President Newsom or whoever then goes back to using the old shitty 40-year-old one?
Apparently it does, because Trump was very clear saying that he would use this 747 as Air Force One and then take it with him in retirement.
Right. He's
keeping it.
That part just doesn't work, right? I mean, and then there's the technical aspect of, this is your area of expertise here. Obviously, experts are saying this vessel would have to be ripped apart bolt by bolt and investigated for eavesdropping.
That was the first thing that came to my mind when I saw the initial report that this was going to happen. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. You would have to take this thing down to its metal studs.
It's the president of the United States. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. It's got to be rife with listening devices, and maybe something worse, maybe something more sophisticated, something in the avionics, for example.
Sure.
You can't just take their word for it that it's clean.
Right. Even they might even think it's clean and be mistaken. Right.
Sure.
So.
Right.
So there's all those concerns. And then I was thinking there's something nobody's talking about was how does it make the United States of America look, Donald Trump, that it can't afford its own presidential jet, right? Like you don't see President Macron shaking down the Senegalese for a new plane. You don't see President Putin asking his, Georgia for a new plane. It's like we're the U.S. I mean, surely we can build and pay for our own plane. And in fact, we are, right? Currently, Boeing is under contract. They're working on it. And it's the security stuff that's been delaying things.
That's exactly right. It's been going on for quite some time now.
So, I mean, this reminds me a lot of stuff that happens with Trump, where he doesn't really think through the logistics, right? It's just like, he's like a little boy. It's like the military parade idea. A lot of people focus on the optics. It looks like the former Soviet Union or like Nazi Germany. I don't know. I think military parades are cool. I love watching them. I think, hey, let's go see the missiles we pay so much out of our taxes for. But, those tanks they rip up the streets. They're not built for them.
Yeah.
And so there'll be millions of dollars in street repairs. He doesn't think that through. I bet he has no idea how streets are constructed. I did a deep dive on this when I was studying the reconstruction of Afghanistan and how, the way you build roads is there's so many different ways to do it, from cheap to very expensive. But he doesn't think about things like that. And I think he's right now biting off a lot more than most presidents could chew. Right. I mean, he's trying to get that Nobel Peace Prize.
That's exactly what this is about.
He's trying to get it Ukraine. I mean, I don't know. He doesn't care about Sudan. Maybe that's next.
No, he doesn't care about Gaza. The Israelis killed another, 22 children today. bombing a hospital that they thought maybe some target that they wanted was in the hospital. But yeah, you're right. I think that he's very serious about this Nobel Peace Prize, and so you get the Russians and the Ukrainians to finally agree on something. You make peace with Iran after what, 46 years.
God bless him. I hope it works.
I hope so too. I hope so too.
I mean, there's look, we're in the criticism business. I think it's important to give credit where it's due, right? I mean, there's something about Donald Trump. He doesn't like to see things broken. He doesn't like to see buildings blown up. He likes to build them and put his name on them. He doesn't like to see people die needlessly. I think he actually cares. I think he actually does think, when you hear him talk, look at his face and listen to his voice when he talks about like the Ukrainian and Russian soldiers and civilians dying for nothing. He hates that. I think he hates that. I don't think Biden or Obama or Bush gave a shit about that.
No, I agree. Otherwise, they would have done something.
So in a weird way, right? It took Nixon to go to China. It took a lunatic, because Trump's a lunatic, to basically bring peace. It's the ultimate indictment of the American system. Only a nut would stop the war machine.
You know what? Yeah. I mean, all I can do is agree. And I'm in Greece right now, and I've given, I don't know, at least a half a dozen interviews to the Greek press since I got here, a couple on TV, and they all ask these same questions. And I said in one interview day before yesterday that I'm approaching this from the left, right? I had to leave the Democratic Party because it was too far right wing, and so I left it. And I find that I've come out on the other end in agreement with Donald Trump on foreign policy more than I'm in agreement with the Democratic Party on foreign policy.
100%.
If Donald Trump can bring peace to these regions, then God bless. Great. That's what we want.
Forget, Gaza didn't get destroyed on Trump's watch.
That's right.
On Biden's watch.
Joe Biden's watch. And speaking of Joe Biden, if I may, and I don't mean to just
please
to throw this on you. It's something that I forgot to mention I wanted to talk about today, but I think it's newsworthy. Jake Tapper has a new book out with a co-author on essentially the final days of the Biden administration, or the final months of the Biden administration. And it's being excerpted in The New Yorker. Today's big bombshell explained a lot. You might recall that George Clooney wrote an op-ed in the New York Times saying Biden should drop out of the race. And everybody said either, why in the world would George Clooney say something like that? Or, who's George Clooney to tell us that, he's nobody, he's a Hollywood actor? Well, now we know why it was George Clooney that wrote this. There's a story behind it that Clooney and Jeffrey Katzenberg hosted the biggest fundraiser in the history of the Democratic Party.
Right. Biden
had flown in to Los Angeles from the G7 summit in Europe. And he's known George Clooney for 30 plus years. So he flies into LA, he goes to the summit, he's backstage. George Clooney goes up to him saying, "Mr. President, so glad that you could make it. It's so good to see you again." He says, "Hi, how are you? I'm Joe Biden." And an aide grabbed Biden's arm and said, "Mr. President, you know George." And then Biden says, "Well, thanks for being here today, George." And Clooney said he knew at that instant that Biden had to go. Well, at the White House, there was an uprising. They were going to take Clooney down, whatever that means. like they're mafia dons over there at the White House. And Clooney decided to write this op-ed. So he called Katzenberg, and Katzenberg said, "Oh, I wouldn't do it because it's going to come off as ageist." And Clooney said, "Name one thing that I say in this op-ed that's not true." And Katzenberg admitted, "It's all true. I saw it myself."
Mm-hmm.
And so he published it. And then he said that he had called Obama before it was published. And he said, "Listen, I'm going to publish this. Biden's got to go." And Obama said, "If you publish it, all it's going to do is piss him off and make him dig in his heels," which is what happened.
True.
Because then it took another 3 weeks after the debate before he finally dropped out. So this book is out
next week.
Today, right? Or next week?
Next week. I think it's Thursday of next week.
Okay. Usually books are released on Wednesdays, but you may be right. Maybe it's because they're excerpting like they are. But anyway, it's like every day there's this bombshell about how Joe Biden really was demented, as we all thought, but the details show that he was actually more demented than we thought.
Yeah, well, I mean, I remember thinking when I read Clooney's op-ed, look, there's no way you could dismiss it. He was a longtime friend and ally of Biden and of the Democratic Party. This was written clearly in more sorrow than in anger. It was written by someone who cared about the Democratic Party and who's an American patriot and cares about, the mental state of the president, and the country's more important than the ego of a fragile old man. Yeah, and right. This was, it's honestly, Republicans they should be conducting congressional investigations over what happened and who knew it and who knew it when. The thing that shocks me is that Tapper got, and full disclosure, I know Jake Tapper.
Yeah, I do too. Jake's been very good to me.
He's been good to me too. He's a very nice person, and
really is.
And look, he deserves to take a few licks for having been silent about what he knew before Election Day. Very clearly, he and everyone else in official Washington and in the news media knew all about what we're talking about going back for years. And I would argue that Biden wasn't fit to run in 2020, which is why he ran from the basement. The pandemic served him as well as it served me in my divorce. It helped me out. If it wasn't for the pandemic, Biden never could have campaigned effectively in 2020. He would have had no excuse, no cover. But that said, Tapper has co-written, what appears to be the first thorough history of this cover-up, and it's absolutely outrageous. Even when you consider like Woodrow Wilson and the presidency that was effectively run by the First Lady, toward the end of his presidency, you consider there was an incapacitation period under Ike. Richard Nixon lived at the bottom of a bottle for a long time. Even LBJ as well. This is bigger than the sum total of all of those. Because a man was elected president under false pretenses. He was too old. Well, it's not that he's too old. Bernie Sanders is older than Biden, and he's sharp. He could do this. But the point is, he was clearly suffering from dementia. Those of us who pointed it out, we were accused, are you a gerontologist? Are you a doctor? What do you know?
I remember people saying that all the time.
They said that, and I was like, I remember just saying, I don't have to be like an animal biologist to know a cat when I see one, and I know a person who's suffering from dementia when I see one, and that right there, that's someone who's suffering from dementia. There were so many incidents, so many tells. The time that he called out for the lady at one of his rallies who had died 6 months earlier in a terrible car crash.
Oh, it was a congresswoman from Indiana.
She died in a tragic car wreck. Her kids died too. He went to the funeral, spoke at her funeral. Hey, come on up. That you don't do that. That you don't forget that someone died when you attended and spoke at their funeral. Nobody does.
That's
So,
right.
and it was just like, and they thought this was okay. I mean, and it, the Democrats argued that Donald Trump is an existential threat to American democracy, to the Constitution, that everything that is good and right. And like, if they really believed that, then why didn't they take this campaign seriously enough to push him out years ago and have a vibrant, open primary process without the DNC's greasy thumbs on the scale, like it always is in every single election?
Yes.
And like, get the best person you can, recruit them out of politics or outside of the world of politics, but get the best, because it's a national emergency. They didn't care. They didn't take it seriously. They said they thought fascism was nigh, but I mean, it's disgusting. Honestly, I don't know. And even now in the comment section of the New York Times or Washington Post about this, you'll see these people say, well, he's still better than Donald Trump. Okay, right now, Democrats would be in a position to say, if they had done the right thing about Biden, to make some arguments about Trump's mental acuity. But they can't say dick now.
Good point. Good point. And, forgive me for going off on this tangent, but let's talk for a second about the corruption of the Democratic National Committee. I'd like to know, where the hell was Jill Biden in all this first? Jill Biden had a responsibility to the country as First Lady to say, Joe, you can't run. You're not mentally able to be president. You can't run. I won't let you do it.
Divorce me.
Number one. Number two, the DNC covered it up for more than 4 years. Not just the 4 years he was president, but you're exactly right, Ted. The 2 years of the campaign, they covered it all up. Number three, did you happen to see this situation in the last 2 days with David Hogg? David Hogg, I tell you, I can't think of any 23-year-old kids that I have such a deep respect for. But David Hogg is one of the kids who was almost killed in the mass shooting in Florida. I forget which one.
Yeah.
And
Parkland.
Parkland, thank you. And so he, made gun control his issue. He went on to like Harvard or Dartmouth or some great school, Harvard, and got himself elected one of two vice chairs of the Democratic National Committee. Now, we mentioned on the show, I think it was last time, that he said he wanted to start primarying old Democrats who are, in their 70s and 80s and just aren't able to carry out their duties. And it's time to make room for some new blood. And immediately the rest of the DNC jumped all over him. Well, guess what happened in the last couple of days? A DNC representative from Oklahoma who was like a lesbian, trans woman, I don't know, lizard people, I don't know. She checks all these boxes. She said that the DNC charter said that the vice presidential slot that David Hogg occupies should be reserved for a woman or a woman of color or a gay woman or whatever. And this DNC Rules Committee yesterday not only agreed, but they threw David Hogg out. They announced that they're going to have a special election for that seat. And he's not allowed to run.
Yeah, I mean,
so
it's a coup. I mean, they basically coup him out.
Yes.
And the
Steve
thing
Grumbine is the one who's been tweeting about it, our friend Steve Grumbine. And I said, this is exactly why I'm not a Democrat. There's nothing democratic about the Democratic Party. It's a party of special interests. It's not a party that would welcome somebody like me.
Right.
It's become a right-wing party under the guise of an inclusive left of center party. It's not at all.
It's a woke right-wing party.
Yeah, it's a woke right-wing party. That's a fantastic way to describe it. And after the Democratic Party's behavior since the start of the Gaza war, that's it. That's the final straw. I'm out permanently.
No,
Done.
I'm with you. Look, I think we talked about David Hogg a little bit in that, like, I don't necessarily agree that like just age is the barometer. But I mean, if someone, it's a case by case. But if you end up with like a Dianne Feinstein situation, they shouldn't have to be primaried out, right? I mean,
right.
This is why you have a party. You get a call from Chuck Schumer or whoever, and it's like, listen, we got to talk. It's
yes.
like you need to, and that's what should have happened to Biden. And I agree with you about Dr. Jill Biden. She should have absolutely done this. She should have told her husband, "There's no good for the good of the country and for your legacy and for the party. You've got to step down. Like, you got to do what you said you were going to do when you said we view ourselves. It was all back channels, right? But like, I'm going to be a one-term president. Everyone's like, yeah, that makes sense, right? Transitional, kind of like Pope Benedict.
He said that. Those were his words.
I'm a transitional.
Yes. I'm a transitional president.
I'm too old. I'm not going to, I didn't want it. Pope Benedict didn't want it. And in fact, he couldn't finish the job. So yeah, no, I mean, and it is reprehensible. Also, while we're casting blame, Kamala Harris has a special response. I mean, it's a very difficult responsibility because she could have been accused of self-dealing. But under the 25th Amendment, which requires a simple majority vote in the cabinet, it's incumbent on the vice president herself to initiate the process, triggering it and calling for the vote. I guess the advantage is obviously she could make sure she had the votes before she triggered the vote. I think she could have gotten those votes based on what we know now. She should have done that. And even if everyone thought she was a self-dealing bitch, she should have said, I don't care what the country says about me. I know what's right. I've got to do, they can all, maybe in 100 years, some historian will figure out what I was trying to do. That's what she didn't do it. She knew. And they lied to us, right? I mean, Karine Jean-Pierre, literally, she painted a picture of Biden as the human tornado ripping through the White House. No one could keep up with him. I can't keep up with him. That's a quote.
She said that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, hello? I mean, and there's not to be any consequences for this. Then how are they any better than the Republicans or Trump, who lies like the day is long? They're the same.
They are. They're exactly the same. It's a single party. It's a uniparty. This is the perverted system that we've given ourselves. I've said this before. As recently as the 19-teens, the 1920s, there were 4 or 5 viable parties. Mm-hmm. In the 1860s, there were 5 or 6 parties represented in the House of Representatives.
Yeah,
5 or 6 parties.
4 major presidential candidates.
I was just going to say it. They fielded serious presidential candidates.
Of course, Lincoln, Stephen Douglas, John Bell of the Constitution Party, and John C. Breckinridge.
You are absolutely right. Yes. I use as an example all the time Solomon P. Chase, who was he had been the governor of Ohio, and then he was the secretary of the Treasury, I think, under Lincoln. He was just over the course of his political career, not just as an adult, but as a mature adult, he was a member of 4 different political parties. Every time there was some issue on which he disagreed with the leadership of his party, he would switch parties. Every time. Yeah. That's
awesome. Yeah. I mean, like, obviously the Socialist Party under Eugene Debs was a major force. There's parties that we've forgotten about, like the Populist Party of the late 1800s, the Prohibition Party,
the Progressive Party, the Prohibition Party.
Prohibition Party, super interesting. I always assumed they were a bunch of tight asses who didn't want to have any fun. They were actually a really progressive party.
Yep.
They were in favor of women's rights, women's equality, suffrage, and even the modern iteration of the Prohibition Party. They carried the tradition of being for LGBT rights. And
Yes.
so, because back then, right, drinking was like, people, factory workers blew their entire paycheck on booze, came home, their wives are like, how come there's no food? Shut up, bitch. They beat up their wife. I mean, so yeah, drinking wasn't really fun,
It was in that same period that the British passed a law forcing pubs to close at 11 o'clock because nobody should be drinking after 11 o'clock. You have to get up for work in the morning.
Right. Yeah. Well, even now in Britain, right? If you go to a rock concert, it'll be over by 10:45 because the last tube is leaving at like 11.
That's right.
Yeah, I actually like that, and
I do too.
In New York City until very recently, until like the 80s, I guess it was, you couldn't have more than 2 pool tables in any establishment that served alcohol because before Prohibition, people were getting knifed and shot every day in billiards halls in New York City. They'd get drunk, they'd gamble over pool, they'd get into it, and then all hell would break loose. It just got to be like, the cops couldn't keep up with the corpses. It was too much to deal with.
Oh my God.
I mean, I could see, honestly, I can make the case for Prohibition. I love wine, love it. But I think if I had to vote and say, okay, we're going to abolish alcohol, I think I'd vote for that. I think it would probably be better for society. This is what I mean about like, you shouldn't be voting for your own self-interest, but I like wine. Yeah, I love wine. I love to drink. You've seen me drink. It's like,
we've gone drinking together.
We've gone drinking together recently. We will go drinking again. It's like, but that said, like what's good for Ted Rall is not necessarily what's good for America.
Sure.
So yeah, anyway. But since I can't, until then, I'm drinking. So anyway, what a few thoughts before we move on to other things. While we talk about, the Middle East, we sort of skipped over Syria. Is reaching out to the new government simply good politics, like something we should be doing with Afghanistan and the Taliban? Just have relations with every country, let them govern themselves the way they want? Or is it codifying a radical jihadi who is not good for the progressive direction of the Syrian people? I mean, should we have our thumbs on that scale? Obviously, we helped get rid of Assad, to say the least. So, there's self-dealing there. But I mean, is this someone that the U.S. should associate with, or is it just diplomatic relations and let's just have diplomatic relations?
I think it's a combination of all of those things. I was opposed to not pressuring. I was opposed to any covert action against the Assad government from the very beginning. And I said many, many times, and took shit for it in the Washington Post, that called me an Assad apologist, that whether you like his politics or not, Bashar al-Assad was the only thing standing between the Christian community and utter annihilation.
True.
And so now we've got this guy, Golani is what he goes by, but his name is Ahmed, I forget now, who was one of the founders of the Syrian branch of al-Qaeda, and briefly was a member of ISIS before saying in 2016, well, no, I'm a moderate now, and al-Qaeda and ISIS really aren't the way to go, so I'm going to go my own way. You know what? I think this is one of those situations where we should probably see where it goes. That if we are going to have any influence over this government, it's going to be now. It's not going to be a year or 5 or 10 years from now. And lifting sanctions is the way to go because the Saudis want to lift sanctions. The Turks want to lift sanctions. And if the economy is going to be bad. Yeah, and if the Syrians are going to develop their economy to the point where they're not going to be a threat to any of their neighbors or to anybody else, then we got to help them to do it. So long as he protects minority communities in Syria, all the minority communities, the Shia Muslims, the Alawis, the Druze, the Christians, the Jews, and there are still Jews, ancient Jews in places like Damascus and Aleppo. If he promises to do that and actually carries out the promise, then I think we owe him the benefit of the doubt.
Would the Israelis go in if they felt that, like, they have a relationship with the Druze?
Yeah.
Do you think they would go in to protect them if they were under fire?
100% yes. Definitely. I think they'd go in to protect them if they weren't under fire. I think they'd go in to create their own buffer zone or to steal more land around the Golan Heights, or just for the fun of bombing the presidential palace in Damascus, which they've done many times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you know what? If the Syrians can actually develop an economy, if the Syrians can maintain good relations with other countries, it's going to push the Israelis out of the picture. It's going to make the Israelis irrelevant to that situation, someday at least. And I'm all for pressuring the Israelis.
That day is coming sooner rather than later.
I think it is. I think it is. Yes.
I mean, that's my biggest complaint by far of Trump's foreign policy has been his excessive tolerance of Israel, and, you know, enabling it. Although, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I think wishful thinking, I'm not sure, but I get the impression that behind the scenes there's some pressure.
I'm guilty of wishful thinking, but yeah, I think that there's some pressure right now. Yes.
So how about
and you know what, Ted, in all of these little, I shouldn't use the word little, in all of these separate conflicts involving Israel, whether it's Israel, Hamas, Israel, Lebanon, Israel, Syria, I'm never on the side of Israel. You can't trust them. They don't give a shit about international law or about crimes against humanity or war crimes. And that's why they're apoplectic that Donald Trump won't simply do what they tell him to do.
Yeah.
So
no,
I find myself with the Syrians on this.
And the Israelis are, yeah, I mean, you know, the old days of like, you know, the moderate Israelis like Menachem Begin are long gone, right? I mean, that's over. The regime has been so radicalized.
Oh my God, yeah.
And the population's been so radicalized. I mean, it's like basically the last vestige of liberal culture is haaretz, and if they ever go out of business, they're done for over there.
You're absolutely right. You want to get the truth on Israeli politics? It's in haaretz.
Yeah,
that's it. It's even worth spending the money for the subscription.
Yeah, it's very good.
It is.
Yeah, my cartoons ran in there for years. I used to love.
Oh, that's great.
I love seeing them translated into Hebrew.
Oh, that's great.
So cool. But all right, so let's talk about the Menendez brothers. Back in 1989, for people who are like younger than us, not everyone may remember this, right? You know, I was but a wee lad in my 20s when this happened. But anyway, it was a notorious murder case. I have a person. So basically, these two brothers, very close to each other, they were the kids of a fairly well-off family. A very sort of hard-charging, authoritarian, dogmatic father, and kind of like a very weak, a sniveling wife, a mother who didn't really protect them. They allege that the father was physically and sexually abusive. And basically one night while the parents were watching TV, the two boys walked into the living room with shotguns and shot their parents to death. The not making them look awesome was their decision to go on a bit of a spending spree after this, you know, hey, it's me time. And, you know, but they were, you know, 18 or whatever when this happened. They were ultimately arrested. This was at a time like when there were a lot of notorious cases. There was the Preppy murder case in New York City. O.J. Simpson was just happened around the same time. So there were a lot of these kind of things. It was a local case that became a national case. The Menendez brothers were tried not once but twice, and there was a lot of it was a very polarizing case where people either completely sympathized with them and thought that believed their story, but the jury didn't. The jury ultimately sent them to prison, where they've been for over 30 years.
Life without parole.
Life without parole. There's been a Netflix documentary that came out and basically changed the game for them. It created public sympathy. Now, with more awareness and understanding of parental abuse, there's more of a sense of like, this is something that people understand better. And also, so now, and Governor Newsom, who would be responsible for issuing a pardon, has signaled that he's amenable to strongly considering one. And I think the TV thing changed everything. So now they've just been resentenced to 30 years, or 50 years to life, but with a possibility of parole. There was already a pre-existing parole date scheduled for fairly soon. And so it looks like all eyes are going to be on that. We don't know if that's going to be the date when this process happens or if that's a different process. But basically, this is it's a Rorschach test for how you see how people should, whether you believe victims or alleged victims, whether you believe these two victims, whether you can sympathize with rich, privileged people, whether you can, how much credence we should give to them. And, it's just super interesting. For me, it's pretty simple. I would say even if they were guilty of, they were the biggest shitheads in the world who just wanted to make money and kill their parents because they were louts, and that the parents have been silenced and were innocent and pure, they've been in prison for over 30 years. So for me, it begins and stops there. It's like, I would say, let them go. There's no public safety issue. There's basically no one goes to prison when they're 20 and then comes out when they're in their 50s and start killing people. That just doesn't happen. So it's like, they're not going to hurt anyone else. And the family of the victims, they all want him to be released. And if they're okay with it, it's okay with me. They're the ones who care. These are their loved ones. But what do you think is going to happen there, John?
I think they're going to get their parole. One of the things that was found right around the same time that the Netflix documentary was out was a letter that Lyle Menendez had written to a cousin saying, "My father's still raping me."
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, nobody had ever found that letter during the trial or the multiple trials that they had. And so with that as new evidence coming to light, showing that there really were mitigating circumstances, I think that's why the court made the decision to give them a shot at parole. So what you're saying is probably the way it should have been from the beginning. They did it. They walked in and just blasted their parents. And by their own accounts, they were especially cruel to their mother, blasting her multiple times while she was begging for them to stop. But with that said, their father was a monster. He was raping them from an early age. And this went on for more than a decade that he was raping them. And their mother just pretended that everything was fine and that nothing was happening. So they did it. They've been punished for it. There were mitigating circumstances. I think they should be released.
So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out politically, whether that's going to be something that's sort of Willie Horton laid on at the feet of Newsom when he runs for president. Soft on crime. The politics haven't become that clear yet, but I think we know which way that's going to go.
Ted, one of our viewers makes a valid criticism. Deviation says that respectfully, and thank you for using that word. Respectfully, I think there are more important topics in geopolitics right now than a domestic double murder. What about India, Pakistan? We haven't talked about India and Pakistan.
True.
But we really should. So India and Pakistan over the past week have been on the brink of a full-scale war. They've crossed the border. Each of the two countries has crossed the border a number of times. The Pakistanis shot down a couple of Indian planes. The Indians have shot down a couple Pakistani planes. Lots and lots of drones. A handful of deaths. Thank you, Deviation. But I want to make an important point here. And nobody seems to know. I know this from my time living in Pakistan and serving at the American Embassy in Pakistan. And I don't know why nobody else knows this, because I always thought it was public, that the Pakistani nuclear arsenal is under the command and control of the Pentagon. When Pervez Musharraf was the president of Pakistan, he was trying to prepare for the possibility of being overthrown. And he was afraid that an al-Qaeda type would take over Pakistan and launch nuclear missiles at India. And
that was a legitimate concern.
Legitimate concern. Still today, it's a legitimate concern.
In Pakistan, it's always a concern.
Always. And so he turned over command and control to the Pentagon. So there's not going to be a Pakistani nuclear launch on India. And the Indians know this. And so there's not going to be an Indian launch on Pakistan. But with that said, I have never been to two countries that hated each other as much as India and Pakistan. Look, I'm Greek. I'm in Greece. Every 5 minutes, the topic of Turkey comes up here. I'm so tired of talking about Turkey this week. I feel like I'm going to, faint. But it is nothing like the depth of hatred between India and Pakistan. Do you see this turning into an actual prolonged conflict? And whether the answer is yes or no, do you see it leading to any change in Kashmir, which is how this started in the first place?
No and no. I think that, obviously things don't change until they do. And someday, obviously, this is an inherently unstable situation. And so at some point, unstable situations tend to resolve one way or the other. They tend to combust. But, as with China and Taiwan, they can go on for a long time. And so I think, right now, because of the dynamic that you said, that's crucial, right? Pakistan doesn't have the ability to launch a nuclear weapon. And so for that reason, there will be no nuclear exchange. And if there's not that much at stake, then, Pakistan, if they start a war with India, they're going to lose it because they always do. And they don't have the military power to take on and defeat the Indians. The Indians, kind of view Pakistan, like a Great Dane looking down at a teacup poodle, like, oh, there you are, little yippy dog, much smaller, much weaker. Their economy is a much worse shape than the Indians.
Yes.
The Indians have a dynamic, robust, expanding, exploding economy. That's not true about Pakistan. And so I think that's going to stay the way it is. It's a stupid, if I could undo the partition, I would. I think it was one of the dumbest disasters to come out of the 20th century. But, in terms of Kashmir, as long as India and Pakistan are two different countries, I just don't see how, India's a little bit militarily expansionist. It's something that we don't really think of that much about. But over the years, they annexed, what is it, Siddiq or Siddith or
Sikkim.
That's Sikkim, right? That's a forcible annexation of a Himalayan mountain kingdom back in the
it was an actual country.
It was a real country. I went to college with a girl who was a princess and from there she was a pretender to the throne, right? It's like it was a real country. The Indians were like, yeah, we just sort of think we should have that. There was no reason, but like, we're India, and we're just a big country, and we're going to expand a little bit there. So the Indians are, they're the country to watch here. If anything turns ugly, it'll be because Modi or someone else in India makes it happen. It used to be, if we were having this conversation during the Bush years, I would have said, like, Pakistan is dangerous. They're a deeply unstable force here in South Asia. They're fine. They have all the madrasas that are, but that's all different now. Now India is the unstable or the destabilizing force, I think, in South Asia. And they're not giving up Kashmir, even though, frankly, it would do them a lot of good to do so. But they don't give up territory. They take territory.
They don't give up territory. And, the sad truth is that when India and Pakistan became independent and they split, as it was all India, of course, and they split and Pakistan declared its own independence. East Pakistan, which later on became Bangladesh. Anyway, whole bunch of terrible political developments there. Kashmir was supposed to be independent. And the plan was that the Pakistani administered part and the Indian administered part would become independent on the same day. At the same time, the two countries would withdraw from the territory and everybody would live happily ever after. And so the Pakistanis began to withdraw. The Indians refused to withdraw. The Indian military went in and took part of what had been administered by Pakistan, and it's been stuck like that since, I think, 1947.
Yeah.
And there's been no change ever since.
Yeah, that line of control is pretty much.
And that's what it's called, the line of control. It's not a border. It's just.
But it's de facto, it is a border.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But not in the legal sense is what I mean.
Right. It's one of those, when you look at the map and you see a dotted line, it's one of those dotted lines.
Yeah. When I was at the CIA in my last headquarters position, one of the CIA's senior most officers was tasked with going to Pakistan and going to India and convincing the Indians to just walk away. Right? I'm sorry, to the Pakistanis, walk away. Just let India have it. We'll give you billions of dollars in development aid, and you can lick your wounds. He flew out there, and the Indians said, "Yeah, we would support the Pakistanis just walking away and giving up. Yes, and we might even throw a couple dollars in." And the Pakistanis are like, "Are you out of your minds? We would get nothing. First of all, whatever money you would send us would be stolen, right, by the oligarchs or the government or whatever. They're all corrupt." I told you about going to Dubai one time to talk to Benazir Bhutto. It was, I don't remember anything about the substance of the conversation. The only thing I remember is that we were in the living room. I was with the deputy chief of mission, and we're talking to Benazir Bhutto, and we hear a car drive up, and she says like this, she goes, "So help me God, if that is another Bentley, I'm going to kill him." She was talking about her husband. And I thought, lady, you make $60,000 a year. You live in a $10 million seafront villa in Dubai, and you're talking about another Bentley? So that's who we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
And it's no wonder that now 23 years after my boss went out there to try to make peace, nobody's budged.
No. And, people forget that the term deep state comes out of Pakistan. Right? Like, by the way.
Oh, and I know we only have a couple of minutes left, but Luke has a question that I absolutely have to jump into.
All right, let's do it.
He asks if I could explain the Greek anger at North Macedonia, because there's even a party over the name issue. Oh my God. This is only a barely this close second to Turkey in Greece.
Well, is it the Greek anger at Macedonia, right? Isn't that right? Or
North Macedonia.
Okay, all right. So let's.
Until recently, we called it FYROM, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. So, oh man. North Macedonia, which is now a member of the European Union and NATO, in my humble view, it's a fake country. It's not a country. First of all, they're Slavs. The language that is spoken there, that they today call Macedonian, is actually a dialect of Bulgarian. It was given the name Macedonia. That state was given the name Macedonia by Joseph Broz Tito, who was the dictator of Yugoslavia, back in the day. He did that to put pressure on the Greeks. Now, what's in the name? What's important in the name is that Greece's northern state is called Macedonia. The capital of Macedonia is Thessaloniki, which is Greece's second largest country. I'm sorry, Greece's second largest city.
This is the same Macedonia that Alexander
the Great. Alexander the Great was Macedonian. He was from the ancient town of Vela. Vela is in Greece, right? The Macedonian that Alexander the Great spoke was a dialect of ancient Greek. So this entity that now calls itself Northern Macedonia
was part of Yugoslavia.
Yeah, there's nothing Macedonian about it. And then just to stick their thumbs in the eye of the Greeks, they did this on purpose. They took the 16-sided star called the Star of Vergina, Vergina being a town in Greece, an ancient town where Alexander's palace was. They took the Star of Vergina and they made it their flag. Right? Number one. Number two, they changed the name of their airport from Skopje International Airport to Alexander the Great International Airport.
For a long time, Greece also just referred to the regime as Skopje, or
Skopje.
The regime.
That was you could only call it Skopje if you're talking about the regime, or Fyrom if you wanted to call it something else, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. So there were talks between Greece and Fyrom that started in 1993, right? And for a long time, it looked like they were going to accept the name the Republic of Upper Vardar, the Vardar River being what separates it from Greece.
That's cool. Yeah. It sounds like something out of a spy movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to be a citizen of the Republic of Vardar.
Yes, I like that too. And in the meantime, the Serbs are like, that's not even a country. So the Serbs are jumping in on the side of the Greeks. The Greeks send half their military up to the border in 1994. It looked like that they were actually going to go to war and to overthrow this rump state, Fyrom. And then the Europeans came and they said to the Greeks, you guys need to calm down. You need to back off. It's just a name. It's no big deal, blah, blah, blah. It took another 20 plus years. And finally the Greeks relented. They said, look, it's not worth the threat to security, not Greece's security, but European security to have this issue, still bubbling along. And they agreed to the Republic of North Macedonia. Well, within a single day of the signing of the agreement, the Skopjean government began referring to itself in international fora as the Republic of Macedonia. And so the Greeks had to send troops back to the border, and every once in a while the North Macedonians have to be slapped down. But, eventually this is going to go away as a problem.
Well, what's their beef? Why don't they just are they having trouble forming a national identity? Is that their...
Yes. Yeah, they are. They have no national identity. They're Yugoslavia.
So how did they end up as an independent state? Were they just the leftovers from when the other, like Bosnia and Herzegovina and Serbia and Croatia broke up?
That's exactly what happened and exactly when it happened. And Montenegro declared independence, and they were like, oh my God, if Kosovo and Montenegro are going to be countries, then we need to be a country.
Well, like in Gilligan's Island, they would just be like, and the rest.
Yes, and the rest. That's right. And all the rest. That's right. We're old, Ed.
It's really sad, by the way. Kind of. I mean, it was so interesting after the collapse of the USSR to see how the various independent Soviet republics created national identity. And with some, it wasn't really that hard. And then with others, it was more of a challenge.
Well, Jay is pointing out that every Northern Macedonian that he's met has been ethnically Albanian, and most of them are. In the western part of the country, they're mostly ethnically Albanian, and in the eastern part of the country, they're either Bulgarian, ethnic Bulgarians, or Roma. So they really don't have a cohesive national identity.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So how do you think, you said you think it'll resolve? How?
I think the rest of the world is going to call them North Macedonia, and they can call themselves Macedonia all they want. It's not sticking. And so if they hope to get anywhere in the European Union, and you know what, I think they're not in the European Union yet, now that I think about it, because the Greeks are blocking them over the name.
Oh, right. You have to be, yeah, they have to get a not unanimous.
It has to be unanimous. Yeah, that's right.
So that won't happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So now in Greece, I'm in Athens right now, and you see like flags all the time. Macedonia is Greece. Macedonia is Greece. And it has the star of Vergina. It's an issue here.
It's so interesting, right? I mean, people always have to come up with reasons to get mad at each other.
True.
We do it too.
And the Greeks really want to just be focused on the Turks. They don't want to have to worry about anybody else.
Yeah. So awesome. All right, John. I think are we sufficiently deprogrammed for today?
I'm deprogrammed. It's actually 20 to 8 here PM, so I'm going to go have dinner.
All right. Are we doing Thursday or are we doing Friday for the next one? I can do either.
Friday. Doing Friday.
All right. We'll work out the time. We'll announce it on social. Thanks everyone for watching.
Thanks everyone.
Go check us out. Thanks for watching and listening. Take care.